Most men ask the wrong questions. They ask out of curiosity but without creating connection. They ask to move forward but without building trust. But the right questions don't create pressure, they create genuine desire. When you ask with real understanding, she doesn't pull away. She opens up. I'm Dr. Rosie Adams, and I want to start this video with something I see constantly in my practice. Most men don't fear building intimacy, they fear asking for it. They fear that moment when they ask a question about deepening connection, and the woman either freezes, dismisses them, or changes the subject entirely. Her energy shifts. The vibe dies. But what if I told you that there's a way to ask a woman about intimacy without sounding desperate, without creating awkwardness, and without facing that painful silence? What if there's a method that uses psychological understanding, not manipulation, but real emotional intelligence, that understands how women actually process emotional and physical closeness? That's exactly what you're about to learn. Before we dive deeper, let me share something most people don't realize. Women don't reject intimacy itself. Women reject the feeling attached to the question. If the emotional experience feels forced or unsafe, the answer is no. But if it feels right, genuine, and mutual, the answer comes naturally. The questions you're about to learn make it feel right. Every man who faces rejection when approaching intimacy usually makes one of these critical mistakes. He asks too directly, he asks too soon, he asks with visible nervous energy, or he asks without first building that invisible emotional connection. Here's what most men miss. Women don't decide about intimacy logically, they decide emotionally. The moment she feels safe with you, truly understood, genuinely desired but never pressured, emotionally aligned, that's when the door opens naturally. Today, I'm going to give you the psychological framework to ask for emotional and physical closeness in ways that feel natural, that honor her autonomy, and that remove rejection entirely from the equation. But before we go into the actual techniques, let me explain something critical about female psychology that I see men misunderstand constantly. Women experience desire differently than men do. For most men, attraction is visual and instantaneous. You see someone attractive and your body responds immediately. Your neural pathways light up. It's immediate. But for women, attraction is layered. It builds slowly. It accumulates through context, through emotional safety, through conversation, through demonstrated trustworthiness, and through genuine anticipation. This is why a woman can meet a man, feel absolutely nothing, and then 3 weeks later find herself completely drawn to him. It's not that she was playing games or being unclear about her feelings. It's that her attraction needed time to develop through shared emotional experiences. Understanding this changes everything about how you approach intimacy. When you know that her desire builds through emotional layering rather than immediate intensity, you stop rushing, you stop pushing, you start creating the actual conditions where her desire naturally escalates on its own. And that's where your power comes from. The first technique I want to share is this: you never ask directly. I want to repeat this because understanding this alone can fundamentally change your success. You never ask a woman for intimacy directly. Why? Because women don't respond powerfully to direct proposals, they respond deeply to emotional invitations. There's a massive difference between these two approaches. Asking directly creates pressure. Pressure creates defensive resistance. Resistance turns into rejection. It's a predictable pattern, but when you invite emotionally, subtly, genuinely, authentically, you shift the entire dynamic. She doesn't feel like you're forcing anything. It feels organic. She feels like she's making the decision herself. And when a woman feels like the decision is genuinely hers, she almost never rejects it. Let me show you how this actually works in real interaction. Think about the last time someone tried to sell you something aggressively. The moment you felt that pressure, what happened? You pulled back, right? Even if you were interested before, the pressure killed it. The same psychological principle applies perfectly to intimacy. When a man asks directly, "Do you want to come back to my place?" or "Should we take this further?" he's creating a transaction. He's forcing her to weigh a decision consciously. And the conscious mind is exactly where doubt lives. Self-consciousness lives. Fear lives. But when you create an emotional invitation, you're speaking to her subconscious mind. You're creating a feeling, not asking a question. And feelings don't get rejected the same way questions do. Feelings invite participation. The psychology behind this technique: here's what's happening psychologically when you use emotional invitations. You're giving her space to walk into intimacy naturally, at her own pace. How do you do this practically? You create an environment where she feels safe with you, genuinely, authentically curious about you. Women naturally move toward intimacy when 3 emotional switches turn on simultaneously. First, safety. She needs to feel safe emotionally, not just physically. Second, trust. She needs to feel that you mean what you say and do what you mean. Third, anticipation. There needs to be that magical buildup of tension that makes connection feel electric rather than mechanical. If even one of these emotional switches isn't fully activated, she naturally holds back. Her psychology doesn't allow her to move forward. But here's the beautiful part. You don't need to beg or convince her to activate these switches. You create them through your own presence and intention. Let me break down each of these because understanding them will fundamentally change how you move through every interaction. Safety doesn't mean she needs to know you for years. Safety means she feels certain that you're not going to judge her, pressure her, or make her feel like she made a mistake by opening up. Safety is created through your emotional stability. When you're grounded and you're not reactive, when you don't make her responsible for your emotions, she feels genuinely safe. She can relax. Trust builds when your words match your actions consistently. When you say you're not trying to rush anything, and then you actually respect that boundary. When you tell her you value her feelings, and then you demonstrate that through your behavior. When you respect her boundaries without making her feel bad for having them, trust becomes the foundation that allows real vulnerability. Anticipation is the chemical magic. It's the buildup of emotional and physical tension that makes intimacy feel electric, alive, and dynamic instead of mechanical or obligatory. Anticipation is created through restraint, through subtle suggestion, through the meaningful space between what is and what could be. Here's where it gets really interesting. Most men focus entirely on creating attraction and completely ignore these three emotional switches. They try to be impressive, funny, confident, all good things individually. But they forget that a woman needs to feel emotionally safe, genuinely trusting, and positively anticipatory before any of that surface attraction converts into genuine intimacy. Technique 2. The soft withdrawal effect. The second technique is one of the most psychologically elegant methods I've encountered. It's called the soft withdrawal effect. Here's how it works in practice. Instead of leaning in toward intimacy, you gently lean out, not in a rude way, not in a cold way, just in a way that shows you're comfortable with connection but not demanding it. This accomplishes two things simultaneously. 1. It removes pressure instantly. She can feel the shift. 2. It creates emotional space where she naturally starts leaning in toward you. Here's why this works psychologically. Women feel genuinely safe with the man who doesn't rush intimacy. Not because he doesn't want it, but because he respects her emotional energy and her pace. When she feels that you're not trying to extract something from her, she starts moving toward you on her own. And that is the exact moment when rejection disappears completely, because now it's her idea, it's her desire. Let me give you a concrete example of how this looks in real time. You're sitting close to a woman, there's chemistry between you. The conversation is flowing naturally, there's rapport. Most men at this point would escalate physically. They'd move closer, touch more, try to initiate a kiss. What happens next? More often than not, she pulls back slightly. But here's what most men misinterpret. She's not pulling back because she's not interested. She's pulling back because the escalation felt like pressure. It felt like he was taking instead of inviting. Now imagine this scenario instead. You're in that exact same moment, and instead of leaning in, you lean back slightly. You pause. You look away for just a moment. Just a tiny bit of space. What happens in her mind? Suddenly, the pressure is gone. And in that absence of pressure, she becomes aware of her own desire. Her thoughts shift to something like, wait, why did he pull back? Does he not want this? And without even consciously realizing it, she starts leaning in. She might initiate the touch. She closes the distance. This is the soft withdrawal effect in action. You're not rejecting her. You're not playing games. You're simply demonstrating that you're genuinely comfortable with the natural flow of energy, and that comfort makes her feel safe enough to pursue. Technique 3. The implanted thought shift. This next technique builds anticipation, which is the strongest desire trigger in female psychology. The third technique is what I call the implanted thought shift. It's subtle, it's psychological, and it's extremely effective because it's not a direct request. You don't ask for intimacy directly. You simply give her a thought that naturally leads her toward the idea of greater closeness. You use soft, emotionally suggestive statements. Statements like, I really like the way our energy feels together, or, you're surprisingly easy to be close to, or, you have this calmness that makes everything feel so natural. Notice something about these statements. None of them ask for anything, none of them push or demand, but all of them plant a seed of recognition, a seed of possibility. Women respond to feelings and experiences, not to instructions or requests. When she feels something shifting around you, something positive, something magnetic, intimacy becomes her curiosity rather than your request. And that difference, it's everything. It's the entire game. Here's what's happening psychologically when you use these statements. You're helping her become conscious of feelings she's already experiencing, but hasn't quite put into words yet. When you say, "I really like the way our energy feels together," you're not introducing a brand new idea into her mind. You're articulating something she's been sensing subconsciously. And here's the psychological magic. When you articulate her own feelings back to her, her brain responds with recognition. She thinks, yes, exactly. That's what I'm feeling too. This creates alignment, and alignment is magnetic. It creates resonance. There's also a principle in psychology called priming. When you introduce certain words or concepts into a conversation, they become more accessible and active in the other person's mind. So when you casually mention energy, closeness, connection, natural ease, these words start subtly coloring how she interprets the moment and your presence. She's not being manipulated. She's being guided toward awareness of something that's already present between you. And that transformation from unspoken feeling to acknowledged connection is what converts a nice conversation into genuine intimate connection. Technique 4. Facilitating her feminine energy. Now we're getting into something critical, maybe the most important part of this entire framework, and this is where men mess up constantly. The fourth technique is this. You must let her feel safe in her feminine energy. For women, intimacy is fundamentally tied to emotional states, but specifically to what we call feminine emotions. I'm talking about softness, genuine trust, warmth, vulnerability, openness, receptivity. These are the emotional states where she can relax into closeness. A woman cannot enter or stay in her feminine energy if a man is nervous, tense, overly sexual in his approach, or overly aggressive. Your job as a man is actually quite simple. You hold masculine calm, not forceful, not aggressively sexual, not needy, but genuinely calm. When a woman feels this kind of calm in a man, something genuinely magical happens. Her guard drops, her defenses relax. And when her guard drops, when she's not in protective mode, saying yes becomes natural, not pressured, not forced, just natural. Let me explain what masculine calm actually looks like, because this concept is widely misunderstood by most men. Masculine calm is not stoic silence. It's not being emotionless or detached or cold. Masculine calm is the energy of a man who is fully present, genuinely comfortable in his own body, and not anxious about outcomes. It's the difference between a man who's constantly checking for approval. Is this okay? Do you like this? Should I do more? Am I doing this right? And a man who's simply being present, allowing the moment to unfold naturally. Women are incredibly sensitive to male energy. They can feel when a man is nervous. They can sense when he's trying too hard. They can detect when he's desperate for validation. And all of those energies push her away from her feminine. They push her into her masculine, into her thinking mind, her analytical mind, her protecting mind. But when you maintain genuine calm, when you're grounded and unhurried and present, she softens, she relaxes, she enters her feminine energy, which is exactly where desire lives. This is also why women are attracted to men who seem experienced. Not because experience itself is inherently sexy, but because experienced men tend to be calm. They're not frantically trying to figure out what to do next. They're just flowing, they're present, they're settled. Technique 5. Asking for feelings, not decisions. Now let's talk about the exact moment most men screw this up. Let's talk about the moment when they're about to ask for intimacy. Here's the psychology that saves you from rejection. The fifth technique. Never ask for a yes. Ask for a feeling. This is the distinction that changes everything. If you ask for a yes, you risk a no. That's straightforward. When you ask for a yes, she's weighing a binary decision. And in that weighing, doubt appears. But when you ask for a feeling, you're inviting vulnerability. You're inviting self-awareness. You're removing the transaction. Instead of asking, do you want to? You ask something like, does this feel too fast for you, or do you feel comfortable here with me? See the psychological difference. Instead of pressuring her to make a decision about you, you're giving her permission to check in with her own emotional experience. And when you offer that kind of control and respect, she feels safer. And when she feels safer, she chooses intimacy herself. This technique works powerfully because it completely reframes the dynamic of the interaction. You're not asking her to accept or reject you. You're not creating that pressure. You're asking her to check in with her own feelings and report back. And that's a much easier question to answer honestly. Think about what happens in her mind with each approach. When you ask, do you want to come back to my place? She has to consider multiple things simultaneously. What will he think if I say yes? What will he think if I say no? What does this mean for me? Does this make me look a certain way? Am I ready? Is this too fast? Her mind fragments into doubt. But when you ask, does this feel too fast for you? She only has to consider one thing. How do I actually feel right now? That's it. And here's the beautiful part. If she says, yeah, a little bit, you haven't been rejected. You've been given information. You can respond with complete authenticity. That's totally fine. I'm not trying to rush anything. I'm really enjoying just being here with you right now. She feels heard. She feels respected. She feels safe. And remarkably, often within just a few minutes, she'll be the one escalating because you've removed all the pressure. You've made it safe for her to express and pursue. Technique 6. Mirroring and matching, but we're not quite done. The next technique is where the real psychological depth kicks in. The sixth technique is this: mirror her desire back to her. Here's what almost no man truly understands about female psychology. A woman doesn't decide intimacy based on how much you want her. She decides based on how much she feels you want her, but without losing your composure, without becoming needy. Too much visible desire equals pressure. Too little desire equals disinterest or rejection. Balanced desire equals genuine attraction. So when she leans closer, when she touches you, when she laughs more, when she looks deep into your eyes, when she gets softer around you emotionally, you simply mirror that energy back. Not more, not less, exactly that. This sends one clear subconscious message. We're on the same wavelength, we're synchronized. This alignment is one of the strongest psychological signals for intimacy because it says without words, I see you, I feel what you feel, we're together in this. Mirroring is deeply hardwired into human social bonding. From infancy, humans learn connection through mirroring. When a baby smiles and the parent smiles back, the baby learns something profound. I am seen, I am understood, I am safe with this person. The same mechanism is still active in adult intimacy, even if we don't consciously recognize it. When a woman shows you vulnerability or desire and you mirror it back, not overwhelm it, not ignore it, but genuinely match it, she feels understood at a primal level. This is where most men fail completely. They either underrespond, making the woman feel foolish for showing interest, or they overrespond, making her feel like she's opened floodgates she can't control. The key is calibration. This requires awareness. If she touches your arm gently, you touch hers. If she holds eye contact for 3 seconds, you hold it for 3 seconds. If she laughs and leans in, you laugh and lean in. This creates a dance, and in that dance, intimacy escalates naturally without anyone having to ask for it explicitly. It just happens. Technique 7. Naming the moment. Now let's talk about the final step. The moment that closes the door to rejection entirely without ever sounding desperate. Moments are emotional. Moments are authentic. Moments feel real, not forced. So instead of asking for intimacy, you simply acknowledge the moment you're sharing. You might say, this feels really nice. Or, it's interesting how comfortable this feels. Or, you have a really gentle energy right now. When you highlight the moment, you're not asking for intimacy. You're letting the moment itself invite it. Women follow emotion naturally, and emotion lives in the present moment, in what's actually happening between you. This removes pressure entirely. It removes awkwardness. It removes rejection as a possibility. Because you're not putting yourself on the line. You're not asking for something. You're acknowledging something that's already real. Here's why this final technique is so psychologically powerful. You're removing yourself as the person wanting something. You're not the one asking. You're not the one vulnerable. The moment itself is creating the desire. This is a subtle but absolutely crucial psychological shift. When you say, do you want to? You're the one wanting. You're expressing need. When you say, this feels really nice, the feeling itself becomes the focal point. And women are much more comfortable following feelings than following requests. Feelings feel authentic and real. Requests feel transactional. By naming the moment clearly, you're also creating a shared experience. It's not you wanting her. It's both of you experiencing something genuine together. And that shared experience is the foundation of authentic, genuine intimacy. So there you have it. 7 techniques that use genuine psychological understanding to invite intimacy without pressure, without manipulation, and without rejection. The foundation. Understanding that female desire builds through emotional layers, not visual immediacy. The indirect invitation. Never ask directly. Invite emotionally. The soft withdrawal. Create space so she leans in. The implanted thought. Plant seeds of recognition. Masculine calm. Provide the safety that allows her feminine energy to emerge. Asking for feelings. Let her connect with her own emotional truth. Mirroring. Synchronize so she feels completely understood. And naming the moment. Let authenticity do the inviting. These aren't manipulation tactics. These are psychological principles based on how women actually experience desire, safety, and connection. They honor her autonomy, they respect her process, and they remove rejection entirely because you're creating genuine connection instead of demanding response. If this framework has shifted something in how you see relationships and intimacy, if it's opened your eyes to the real psychology underneath connection, then I'd love for you to engage with this content. Leave a comment, share what resonates with you, subscribe for more psychological insights into relationships and real human connection. And after you finish this video, take a moment to reflect on where you might apply these principles in your own life. Because understanding is only the beginning, application is where transformation happens.